Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Restoring Hope with Crosswinds Counseling. I'm your host, Curtis Smith. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for being here, and a huge thanks to our community partners who make it possible for us to be here every week. Tesco, Prime 47 Downtown, and Shepherd Community Center. The support of those incredible companies makes it possible for us to be here every night on Thursdays on WHMB TV 40. Well, tonight our first guest is Mike Lennox, the Executive Director of Indy RBI. Mike, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
That's a name change for your organization. Tell me what Indy RBI is. Tell me about the name change, why the name change, and what you guys do. It's a lot.
Over our history, which dates back to 1982, we were originally the Indiana Amateur Baseball Association. Then we became Play Ball Indiana when we started doing girls softball to make it sound more boys and girls. And more recently, we changed it to Indy RBI because that's what our program is, reviving baseball in inner cities.
I love that. And how is that going?
It is going so well. It's actually interesting. The last 2 years have been two of our best years ever.
Really?
Yes.
Is that because baseball is one of those few things you really can kind of still do in a pandemic? There's built-in social distancing, right?
Yeah.
90 feet between bases, 60 feet, 6 inches, right?
Yeah.
So there's some built-in social distancing. It's kind of pandemic friendly.
You got your dimensions right. This is very good.
I love baseball.
You know, actually, in our case, I think a lot of it was so much of the kids were kind of stuck in their houses, not able to go to school, and when it sort of relaxed in the summer of 2020, they wanted to get outside, and they wanted to play ball. They didn't care what they were playing, but baseball happened to be what it was.
Nice. Obviously, huge involvement in our community. Tell me about age range, how many kids roughly are playing baseball and softball through your program, and then I'd like to get into maybe more of what it's done for the kids, but give us some nuts and bolts, kind of an overview of the impact you're having in the community.
Well, first off, we range in age from age 3 up to 18.
Wow.
Our primary partner is Indianapolis Public Schools and Indy Parks, so that's where the lion's share of the kids come from. And we've been doing this for a lot of years, easy to say. And I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, but about 30 years, right? Or 40 years, I guess.
Actually, 40 years.
Yeah, 40
the
years.
RBI piece dates back to 1996.
Okay.
And we joined the Major League Baseball program, which is reviving baseball in inner cities. And it's trying to teach kids to be Major League citizens.
How is that aspect going? Because that, at times, could be more challenging than teaching them to be good baseball players. How is it teaching them to be good citizens?
Well, that's probably our biggest challenge, and I'm glad we use that slogan because so much of youth sports is winning and losing. And what we're trying to do is teach that there's a lot more to sports than whether you win or lose, and how you treat your opponents and what kind of sportsmanship you show is just as important, if not more important.
Is that message well received by this generation? Because the older I get, the more maybe jaded I can become on the younger generation. I think that naturally happens to a lot of us. We see them through social media, and I don't know, you know, there's a stigma to the younger generation, but give us some hope here, Mike. Tell us that they're better than we think they are.
I think they are. And even though, you know, a lot of people will say the worst part about youth sports are the parents. And a lot of parents are trying to relive their youthful days and their championships they didn't win through their kids. And so these kids are starting to grasp that there is more to it than that. And we're seeing a lot more kids respond very positively to this message.
So with that, and with the mental health piece that you mentioned coming out of the pandemic, what have you seen in the mental health of kids in our community here over the last 18 to 24 months? Kind of still in the pandemic, coming out of it now, more post-pandemic. What has that transition looked like in our youth?
It's been kind of interesting. I'd say the first year, there was a hesitation. They were outside, not quite sure whether they were supposed to be outside or not. Is this safe? Is it not safe? And then as they got into the season, they kind of loosened up. And last year, man, it was just gangbusters. They were just going like it had never happened before.
Wow.
And I think that was a really good progression for them.
there seems to be a real connection between physical health and activity and mental health. So you're talking about how they're desperate to get outside and get active again and all of that, but it's not just a run around, it's not just to swing a bat, right? There's got to be kind of a mental health aspect to that you see come out as the kids get outside.
I agree with that, and I think a lot of that can be a good coach, a good mentor that helps, because a lot of these kids, so many of the kids in the inner city of Indianapolis are in single parent households. Many of them may not have fathers in the picture, so you got a mom trying to run the house and be the man of the house, if you will. And so sometimes a reassuring coach can just kind of say, you're doing okay, hang in there, you're doing okay. And so they get that little vote of confidence when they come to practice or to a game.
Tell me about this revival of baseball in the inner city with that population, because I think baseball can be seen sometimes as a slow game. It's maybe not the easiest to watch on TV because it takes so long. There's no clock. It's the only game really without a clock. It could be endless. And I feel like, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, I was hearing a lot about kids didn't love baseball anymore because it was slower. They want to play football and basketball. So I wonder about the revival of it in the inner city with that population. Is that going well? Are they taking to the actual game?
I think it's starting to, and I think this is one of the main reasons why the RBI program exists to begin with, is there are actually more opportunities for kids to play baseball in college than in a lot of other sports. But a lot of kids don't know that.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids in the inner city think football and basketball is the only way to go. And they find that, they're pretty good athletes, and all of a sudden they're playing baseball, and they go, I'm not so bad at this game. And they're starting to catch on to it. It's interesting, at IPS, a lot of the kids in high school start playing baseball in high school. It's a very hard game to start learning as a teenager, let alone a high school kid.
Right. But you have 3-year-olds who are learning it.
So
it can be done.
Yeah, with plastic balls and bats, because the goal there is to make it fun so that if they get hit in the head, it's not a big deal. It's a plastic ball.
Right. That's awesome. Mike, if someone wanted to connect with Indy RBI or know more about you guys, how can they do that?
They can go to indyrbi.org.
Very simple, indyrbi.org. Mike, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for all that you're doing in our community and with kids. I think it's making a huge difference, and I love baseball. It's a great sport.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Restoring Hope with Crosswinds Counseling. I'm Curtis Smith. I love when we get to spend a few minutes with a Crosswinds counselor, and tonight we have that privilege. Kendra Johnson joins us now. Kendra, thank you for taking a few minutes to be with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
You're one of the newest Crosswinds counselors, having really just made the transition a couple of months ago.
Yes.
Tell me about your life as a Crosswinds counselor. What is it that you do? How do you spend your days, your weeks? And what do you like about it?
So, even though I just started a few months ago officially, I did do counseling in the schools for Crosswinds, in Noblesville, actually.
Okay.
And that was a good experience, really being able to step outside and diagnose and support the youth that I was working with in that vicinity. But now I get to work with more than just youth in the middle school. And I get to work with adults, and I still have teens. And it's been a change, it's been a shift for me because I actually get to share my faith more now through Crosswinds. And just the clients that I have now actually are more open to that than we're at Lifeline.
I want to tell you, that answer gave me several directions to go, several things I want to ask you. Let's start with the faith component. Why is sharing your faith with those that you're working with so important to you?
Well, it's important because it's an important piece of me, but I also think the clients that I have, and obviously it's if they want to go there, but most of them do, and they have shared A few don't, but they also know that that's an opportunity to do that. And I think it's important to explore that aspect and understand how your faith plays a role. And it's not just mental health, but also that faith component too.
And how would you describe that to someone? How would you say that faith does play a role in our mental health?
How would I describe that to someone? I would say you get to lean on God as well, not just on me as a therapist.
Yeah.
Right? You also get to lean on God, a higher power, and understand that yes, there are challenges, there are struggles, but you will be okay, in a sense.
Let's talk about kids and working with a population maybe that's a little bit older now. I love that. You were talking about working with a diverse population in terms of age. What is something that's wonderful about working with school kids, and what's a real challenge when you're helping kids that are that young?
My background is actually in school social work, so I have a lot of history working with youth, and I think the challenge is just that, developmentally at that age, you're very self-absorbed, and that's just developmentally where you are. And even if you think about middle school students and puberty and going through all of those things, it's a very challenging time. But I also think that is the time where you can make a lot of difference in a youth's life too.
What are some of the challenges when you work with adults? Because not all of them have matured all that much.
This is true. So challenges working with adults. Well, one thing that I joke about with other therapists is that adults have free will. And so because they have free will, even though you may know this may not be the best way to go, you really need to let them choose. Yeah.
And kids don't have as much free will, or they don't know how to exercise it fully yet?
They know because their parents have more.
Right. It's their parents' will.
Yes.
On the topic of kids, what have the last couple of years been like for the kids that you've worked with in a pandemic, coming out of a pandemic? Such a strange world we live in, even now as we start to come out of it. How has that taken a toll on the kids that you've been able to engage with?
Yeah, I would say just seeing the youth that even in my own church that I'm around, I have 2 teens that I work with right now through Crosswinds, and I would say just the being separated from what they're used to, and that transition to having to be at home, and none of us like change. Good or bad, change sucks. And so it's a challenge when you don't have those tools, and it's just a sudden boom, this is what we have to do. And so like teens didn't get to go to prom, they didn't get to graduate, just different things upset the normal day-to-day. And so I think a lot more depression has come out, a lot more anxiety around things, uncertainty, because we also know that youth need stability and consistency, even though they don't always want that, but that's really what they need.
The work obviously means a lot to you. Tell me about that. What does it mean to you to be able to come alongside someone, invest into them, pour into them, and see them get better? How does that reward you?
Oh, it's very rewarding. I think I just recently got to see. So again, I said I was a school social worker, and so I've been doing this since 2012. And so I recently saw a college student that was one of the teens I had in middle school, And they were doing so well. And when they were in middle school, you wouldn't have thought they would be.
It didn't look like a success story was on its way.
No. No, but to really, and then for them to remember me and to say like, oh yeah, I remember, yeah. And so, and it was just amazing to see
that
the
has
growth.
to feel so good.
Yes, it does.
For counselors and therapists out there who maybe are looking for a place to work, why should they work at Crosswinds? What do you love about working at Crosswinds Counseling?
I would say the environment is amazing, and that's one of the key things is just the culture. Also, you get to help people. You get to share about your faith. Just all of those things. Flexibility too, as well.
Great. Kendra, thank you so much for the difference you're making in the lives of youth and adults here in the greater Indianapolis area. We really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Restoring Hope with Crosswinds Counseling. We spent a few minutes with Kendra, and tonight we get to hear from two counselors, thanks to our weekly segment called Counseling Corner. In this week's Counseling Corner, Jenna Garcia talks to us about overcoming depression.
Hi, I'm Jenna Garcia, licensed marriage and family therapist here at Crosswinds Counseling. One of my passions is helping families thrive. Being a parent is one of the best and one of the hardest things you'll ever do in life. And if you're experiencing symptoms of depression and anxiety on top of that, it can feel completely overwhelming. Postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety are actually more common than you might think. 1 in 7 moms and 1 in 10 dads experience postpartum depression. Symptoms can start at any time during pregnancy and up through the baby's first year of life. I'm here to tell you that there's hope. It doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be so hard. With the right support, you can feel better, and I'm here to help. Seeking support is the best thing that you can do for your baby and the best thing that you can do for yourself. If you're experiencing symptoms of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, please reach out to us to schedule an appointment.
Thanks, Jenna. Crosswinds Counseling needs help. Perhaps we need your help. Like just about every organization these days, we're looking for skilled and caring people to work at Crosswinds Counseling. We need women and men who want to invest into the lives of others and help them when they need it most. You can check out all of our career opportunities at crosswindscounseling.org/careers. If you know a qualified counselor or therapist and they feel like they would be a great fit, please let them know about Crosswinds. Again, the website is crosswindscounseling.org/careers. The need for counselors has never been higher. What a treat to hear from two of them tonight. And when we return, we'll hear from our Crosswinds chaplain. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Each week here on Restoring Hope, we focus on the word hope. Tonight in our Beacon of Hope segment, Crosswinds chaplain Will Gross looks at a hero whose story you may not know, and not a hero from the Bible.
Hi, my name is Will Gross, and I'm a chaplain for Crosswinds. Today's message of hope comes from an American hero, not someone from the Bible today. This person's name was Horatio Spafford. He was a lawyer in Chicago in the 1870s. He's very wealthy, owned a lot of land, was also very philanthropic and interested in preaching the gospel and having it being told to others. But he was a man who was no stranger to sorrow. He lost his infant son to scarlet fever. And later in his life, the Great Chicago Fire destroyed many of his properties. And he was instrumental in rebuilding Chicago and feeding the poor and the homeless. But his life got worse than losing property and a son. In 1873, his wife and 4 daughters went to London, England for vacation. Unfortunately, the ship sunk and all 4 of his daughters drowned. His wife made it to England and sent him back a telegraph that said, "Saved alone." So Horatio got on a boat, crossed the ocean by himself to join his wife and mourn the loss of their 4 daughters. On that trip, he penned one of the more famous hymns in the English language called "It Is Well With My Soul." I'm going to read some of these lyrics to you as we close out. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Personally, I cannot imagine the emotion that comes with losing a child or 4 or 5. And yet somehow he found comfort in something inside himself, or he found comfort in someone else. Horatio Spafford knew that the peace of God does come in like a river, even though sorrow and sadness are like waves that roll in the ocean. He had something he was holding on to. No matter what happens, he said, God has taught him to say that it is well with his soul. We serve a God that lets us know that it is well, that brings peace when we're broken, brings restoration when everything has been taken. And that is the message of hope.
Thanks, Will. A great word tonight. It Is Well is absolutely one of my favorite songs. With that word from Will, our time is up tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. And thanks again to our wonderful sponsors, Shepherd Community Center, Prime 47 Downtown, and Tesco. And of course, thanks to our friends here at WHMB TV 40. We'll see you right here next Thursday night at 9:30. Stay safe and be blessed.